how rapidly they are changing?
I never contested what you said.
I am taking
My
opportunity.
question is, how do you think they will face the challenges? I'm all with you on that. We have to move and all those things.
All right. So, all right, I'll again take today classroom in schools. What happened? We have a classroom format like this, where somebody speaks. Slowly, it gets transitioned into kids come and they start building things, and they start viewing things. They start deciding what they like. As they grow up, when this instructional training does not happen, it becomes extremely difficult for kids or grown-up adults then to make choices by themselves. So challenge one I see, there the support that you are all having today or we enjoyed in the past, the next generation 15 years from now they will not enjoy that support. They got to be highly independent. They got to make their own choices. One. Second thing that I also see is today you still have your employees, or I still have, I think, 7, 8 employees working in the Hyderabad, while 20 other employees working in different locations. Yeah? As we move forward, majority of our team members, peers, managers and team members will be connecting through online methods, or I don't know that day what comes through. If we are going to make use of RACE, and then you will have virtualization that happens, which Modi used in his campaign, or yeah, huh? Hologram, or do we get something much superior to that? So we'll have to look and see what communication will help. Second biggest challenge that people will face is working in virtual environments. I don't have any control. There are no time limits. Today discipline is there. Morning you come and swipe, evening you got to swipe out. So when you clock those hours, I have reasonable control on the time spent. In future, I think I will leave it here, it's all about effectiveness of work delivered. So one is output that's offered, two is outcome. So they will have to really, really struggle and create an engagement, create an inspiration to the people who are working on the task so that they get to work together. This is my view in terms of challenges. It's not going to be easy life, future. And definitely it's not going to work in the same classroom format.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're all not sleepy. My name is James Abhilash, and my question goes to all the three gentlemen, even to Menon sir. So I've worked with my dad, sir. We'll talk about that in a bit. You mentioned that when you second generation entrepreneurship is a little easy. Just a quick thing about that. When there is diversification, usually, so when there is diversification from what say your father did. It sort of becomes very much like a new business, completely new business, because it's a new market, and more often than not, it's a niche market. So, the challenge is still there. We'll discuss that, sir, sometime later, maybe. Anyway, my question, sir, is that we have interacted with really, the so-called large companies like Wipro and KPMG on multiple projects. We've tied up with them, and there's something I've noticed over the last 3 years is that these companies are, in my opinion, way too organized. Just bear with me, sir. So it seems as though the structure that holds the processes, etc., are way too generic, and they don't sort of adapt to the requirement of the individual departments. Now, especially when we do turnkey projects like the end-to-end projects with government companies, multiple departments from the same company are involved. So, for example, Wipro we work with, about 5 departments are involved. And the interaction between them is not efficient, and so does this in some way go against the laws of management, or has management education adapted to this sort of change over the many years? I hope I'm not being too generic with the question. Wow, okay, you're not lost.
I'll share. If a company employs 100,000 employees, 100,000 people it employs, it's a values-driven, quite ethical company and makes billions of money. Is that company called big company? Is that company called large company? Say yes or no. So if it is a large company, we should not call it a so-called large company. I'm making a recommendation. Yeah, I have affinity with all of you. Yeah, all right. This is one. Second thing, agree. Second thing, I think when we become large, bureaucracy creeps in. bureaucracy creeps in when we become large. So typically those of you who worked with large organizations, you find the systems are not meant for you. For somebody to manage, unless they have a single storyline today, otherwise they can't manage. Good thing is, 5 years from now, many of the organization policies become people-centric policies. So it will become so lucid, so flexible, that will be more of individual-centric, and at the same time, the governing frameworks will be strong enough, thanks to the communication methodologies that we have evolved. So it is possible to make large companies also more individual-centric. I think so far, very few companies are individual-centric. That is typically large consulting firms. The company that I work for, KPMG, they give great amount of authority because it is all partners-driven firm. Every small group, if they follow a set of guidelines, they can be independent. They don't have to go to office also. So very few firms like that they are able to. Otherwise, large companies have a problem with one, bureaucracy, two, nimbleness. They can't even respond to requirements faster. See, Sanju can respond immediately because all of them, they can overnight, they can come sit together and manage. In a large organization, it goes through a big chain of events. Good question. Bureaucracy does exist. Over a period of time, the policies become more individual centric and things will improve.
I worked in L&T Technology Services for about 2 years, sir. What I observed is the entire company, the entire organization will have a big picture in mind. But coming to the lowest employee, low grade employee, I mean the diploma trainee or the new joinees, that vision is not able to be communicated to them. What are the steps these organizations would take now or in near future so that everyone has a clear picture of what role he is playing in that organization?
Frankly, I think 3 days a week I give speech like this in our office. I did not expect it will be so business centric even here. Yeah? The problems that you are sharing is pretty much like what somebody from Germany says, look, the communication is not effective, the person whom we onboarded is not speaking the same language as that of the vision. Our company is headquartered in Hyderabad. Okay? Yes, I think we got to improve the communication channels across the levels. People in some industries, they grew so fast, they did not really pass through the hurdles that we say, right? You got to, from A to Z, if you have to go, you will have to pass through B, C, D, E, at least some of them. So those who do not pass through, those who are not really literate from the perspective of being a professional, they will not be able to effectively cascade the information. I will say some of those people probably failed to recognize this problem and they did not communicate. When you grow as a leader, even at your own level today, I think what is important is being transparent. If a data point is required to be known by somebody, you make best efforts to communicate that. Yeah? If somebody is not divulging or somebody is not disclosing the data, probably you go and say that information is required, can you help? Yeah? There are very many great examples in terms of communicating information. So like General Electric is known for, despite the size of the company, every person when onboarded, they are being explained. At Cyient, we used to earlier deliver day-long classroom training. Today it is all online module. We gamify the learning. Like you may struggle in terms of learning from others, even these professionals struggle. So we adopt gamification in our training programs. That's how we deliver induction programs. Satisfactory?
Good evening, sir. My name is Kavya. My question is regarding one of the dichotomies that you spoke about, which is regarding service and profit. So suppose we consider an individual essentially who wants to try and combine both, include a profit motive as well as doing service. So could you give me your take or your view on what scope or what opportunities there are presently for applying an MBA to the development sector in India? Essentially from, say, a HR point of view, to apply an MBA in HR to a development sector in India. What scope do we have? What opportunities do we have?
Okay, I think last 3 sentences I didn't understand. To apply?
What scope do we have to apply an MBA in HR to the development sector in India?
Okay. MBA, Masters in Business Administration.
Yes, to apply an MBA.
Profit also includes service. Yeah, only to bring the distinction I shared. Otherwise, unless we provide service to somebody, we don't get any returns. Yeah, how do we maximize that revenues, or how do we monetize those services is the distinction. Sometimes IT, where developed countries, there the per hour rate of effort is higher. Please have a seat, sorry. So therefore we all get into IT so that the revenue realization is higher. Otherwise generally service is applicable. The second point where I am somewhere connected to is, can we offer something back to society? Yeah? So that could even mean watering those plants. Yeah, you offer great service. I think we borrow, my cousin keeps saying, we borrowed this earth from the children who are not even born in some cases though. So therefore, from what HR can do in offering services, there are many industries where we can go. Healthcare industry. Yeah, every effort that we put in is generally for the well-being of people. You will have great amount of satisfaction. Healthcare. Second thing, counseling efforts. Today, I think the problems because of nuclear families in the last 20 years, the support that is being offered to children is lesser, or the citizens is lesser. So if we go into the roles of counseling, so we can add great value. Good HR person makes a great CEO. Good HR person makes a great CEO. There are many companies where HR people have become CEOs. Yeah? Every conversation that you have with a human being, you can cherish it. I'll repeat. Every conversation you have with a human being, you can cherish that. You are adding value to something, to some efforts of the individual, and that is a cherishable moment. What more can we offer? So I would say, in fact, to somebody I was referring to, HR is a noble profession. Then somebody said, what about training? That is, if there is anything called noblest, then training HR people is the noblest profession. So being in the HR profession itself is of great thing to happen. So any field that you enter in, I think if you can have a greater connect with your people and bring about, help them realize their potential, or simply put, help them create an awareness about themselves. Help people create an awareness about themselves. That should give you a lot of satisfaction in terms of contributing to the society.
Conflict between emotion as well as code of conduct, the workplace ethics. So, in your experiences, how did you handle them, sir?
Okay, you have to clarify to me what is code of conduct.
I mean, office rules, the office rules, guidelines, and somebody has broken them due to the reasons. It's a big thing. Like how that emotional conflict, how to handle such situations.
Okay, please have a seat. See, in any case, you all have allowed us to speak. So I am going to give this bhashan to you. Yeah? All the mammals have emotional feelings. There is something called amygdala in our brain, which responds to any situation. In addition to this, there is also something called neocortex. That's generally called rational brain. Yeah? This part is biggest in humans. Okay, that rational brain is biggest in humans. Recently somebody said animals' life is much better, they can do whatever they want. So I had to clarify to the person, they don't have brain. So they can only fight or flight. There is no collaboration, there is no common ecosystem. So coming to the code of conduct and emotional intentions, I think whenever we are responding as human beings, we direct our emotions through rational brain and respond. Sometimes we do not like to converse with somebody, and at the situation demands we got to be pleasant with the person, and imagine that person is employer. We got to be a lot more pleasant. So therefore, we have inbuilt mechanism to be more rational than just passionately jumping into things. We have inbuilt mechanism and we have to be grateful about it. Second, code of conduct is a set of principles. At the moment, we all believe that if you go through 2 years of rigor in a business school, you will become thorough professional, or you will be eligible to go and be a business professional. Yeah? Code of conduct is pretty much like that. You will have to find ways to how do you align to it rather than pushing the guidelines. How I manage, I will find some ways to achieve the objectives instead of going and telling everybody you are wrong, policy is wrong, system is wrong, everybody is wrong, even the world is wrong, only I am right. I think I refrain from saying like things like this. I will find ways to achieve my objectives. Go for it.
Sir, as an entrepreneur, do you want us to believe in luck and fate? As an entrepreneur, do you want us to believe in luck and faith?
Luck and faith. Huh?
Yeah.
Fate.
Faith.
Faith. Okay.
Faith.
Fate. Okay. Whatever I understood. Yeah. Do you want us to believe in luck and fate?
Absolutely.
Okay, before I respond,
I tell you this now. There were hundreds of people who started off with me. Most of them failed. They did the same thing. They did it better than I did. Fate favored. I am not kidding you. A bit of luck is important in everything that you do. If you really think you're cat's whiskers and you don't need fate to stand by you, no. See, thousands of Warren Buffetts are shot into the world. Right? Thousands of people could have become Warren Buffetts. Why only one man became Warren Buffett? Not that others failed, not that others didn't do anything else in life. They also became mini Warren Buffetts, smaller Warren Buffetts, unsuccessful Warren Buffetts. A lot of people evolved into multiple things, but one man became Warren Buffett. It's randomness. I don't know if you have read this book called Black Swans. Black Swans, you should read that. Fooled by Randomness, you should read that also. Read those books. Fate is very important. Just that when you depend so much on fate, or when you depend on fate, just make sure that you don't become a turkey. So what is turkey's life? Every day the farmer comes, oh, he has got me some food to eat, I eat. Like that, it continues till all the 365 days, till it is Thanksgiving. Right? Don't wait for Thanksgiving. I'm not saying that you blindly believe your fate. Your fate is very important. There are two things. I mean, maybe it's a little spiritual, but I'll tell you two things. There are two things that you can believe in, and my mentor is there, who's Shashi Reddy. I'll tell you about that also. There is God of intervention, and there is God of non-intervention. I mean, fate or God, whatever you want to call it. So, for some people, believe in God of intervention, and I'm probably one of those guys who believes in God of intervention. So when you're running, there is a dinosaur or something running behind you, running. What happens? It's almost going to bite you on your ass. All of a sudden, a tree falls on top of the head of the dinosaur and the dinosaur dies. This is God of intervention. The God has intervened, a fate has intervened on your behalf because you were lucky. There is another thing. Again, the dinosaur is running. You're running. You run faster and you escape. So God has painted a picture of the same thing. Fate, again, not God. I don't know how many believers and non-believers, but the fate is still the same. There is one place where He has intervened on your behalf. There is one place where He has not intervened on your behalf. Both of the places you have been successful. But either way, fate has played a role in it. So if you tell me, if entrepreneurs who tell us that there is no role that fate plays, I mean, for them it has not. But for me, I think, as an entrepreneur, fate plays a role. It's not like you can, I would never say it's like, you entirely depend on it. You don't get up in the morning, you don't get up, you don't stand up, you don't show up, you still think you will win. No. You got to do everything. Put about 16 hours or 17 hours of work a day, if you can. I sleep 3 hours, 4 hours mostly. If you can do that every single day, of course there is a chance, higher probability that you will succeed, but you still have to have faith on your side. Because otherwise, it can fail. I'm not kidding you. So I don't know, maybe he has a different answer for that, but if you ask me from an entrepreneur's perspective, fate plays a role. It is not like if you're not lucky, you don't get there. Because so many people try it out here. So many people have tried it out. I myself have tried it out quite a few times and failed. But after you succeed, then of course you can always say, oh yeah, I did it on my own and stuff like that. All that is bullshit. It's So बोलने की बात है. It's not like you can do things on your own. You need a lot of people behind you. I've made a lot of money, like Menansa said, and I've lost a lot of money more than that. 99% of the money that I've made in my life, be it through business or be it through my own employment in multiple places, has been because so many other people helped me in the game. Every company that I've worked for or every company that I've run, there were 100 other people who actually helped me become successful. So I think it's a mix of finding the right people. You should be lucky again. If I have to hand over, because Moving the Needle is, I think, writing off about 20% to its employees. 20% of the company is going to be owned by its key employees. So we believe in that. So to find a good guy, I think you got to be lucky also. That answers your question probably. At least that's my perspective. Huh? Don't tell it in your class tomorrow that, hey, this guy came and told that you got to be lucky and I'm just waiting to be lucky. No, it doesn't work like that. But I think you got to be lucky.
I believe in luck too. One example is when thunder strikes, it hits which building? It lightens. When it lightens, where does it hit? We can't guess. So luck does matter. Luck does matter. I still talk to people who say that when I graduated, there was recession. It still goes on. We don't know which year goes into recession, which is a big bump. Yeah? One common denominator I will say is working hard. Multiplier is luck. Common denominator is working hard. What multiplies this is luck. Fortunately, we have one multiplier which is in our control. That is direction driven. We say vision, etc. It's like when you sit in a car, you want to, let's say, drive to Vijayawada and you don't know that you got to go to Vijayawada. You drive for 20 hours. Will you reach Vijayawada? May not be. Yeah? If you know, I want to go to Vijayawada, then you put that Google map or TomTom map up. So look at the direction. You will reach there probably in 5 hours, 4 hours, some people. So therefore, controllable multiplier is having direction oriented efforts. Denominator is working hard and multiplier is direction oriented efforts. Yeah? Luck, I cannot run away from it. Everything is in that natural power only, at least for me. I have somebody here who works on the high potential leaders. To reiterate, we are a 13,000